me say good morning to the entire trial. Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martini, good morning. Welcome to another edition of To The Point. Today being Thursday, it's the third day of November 2022. And it's Thursday. You know what happens on a Thursday here on To The Point? We do entertain particular units from the Royal Grenada Police Force. And we do have a couple of the officers with us this morning. We're going to let them introduce themselves shortly. Let me say good morning to our listeners. Those of you via K105, those of you who are listening and viewing via GBN TV, whether it's Channel 7, Channel 11, or Channels 20. Social media platforms, especially those of you via the Facebook page. Good morning. Don't forget when you're tuning this morning, share the live. What about our YouTube channel? Also, I encourage you to, those of you who are viewing there, good morning and welcome. And it's my bad this morning. I didn't take names to start off this morning, but I guess that's not going to be a problem. Officers, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you and good morning to all your viewers and listeners. I am Assistant Superintendent Simon Douglas, attached to the Community Relations Department.
All right.
And good morning to you and your viewing and listening audience. I'm Corporal 356 Noel, attached to Community Relations Department.
All right. Well, officers, I want to thank you for being with us this morning here on To The Point. And as usual, when you're here, there's always the option of sharing fruitful information to the viewing and listening audience. Let them know what some of the programs and issues that the Royal Grenada Police Force will be dealing with, especially when we now go into the Utah season. You know, yes. And I'm assuming there will be some new ways in which you will be offering the public, you know, in terms of law enforcement and so forth as we move through for the next couple of weeks. So let's kick it off this morning in terms of what are some of the heightened plans in law enforcement that we will see happening for the next couple of weeks as we get into the Utah season and into the new year 2023. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Firstly, I want to let the public know that our programs from between now and Christmas are geared towards assisting the public in securing themselves and their property.
Yeah.
So unlike the usual programs where we speak about offenses and things of that nature, what we're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks is giving tips on how to be safe, how to protect your property, how to protect yourselves, your children, and so forth. All right? And what we want to let the public know about our intentions at this point is that while the season kicks off and we're going to be seeing a lot more activity in terms of people shopping, people constructing, people repairing, and so forth, law enforcement has to keep up with that, and we are going to be heightening our efforts to ensure that the country is safe for the holiday seasons. So we're going to have a lot more police presence on the streets and elsewhere. We may not have been seeing much foot patrols and mobile patrols and so forth for the past couple of months. That is going to be changing.
All right.
As of yesterday, we're going to be seeing the officers out there much more often. The activities that are going to be taking place, we're going to ensure that there are officers there to police them, to keep the peace, ensure that people enjoy themselves without having to look over their shoulders, as we would say. The streets, especially the towns, where people are going to be doing heavy shopping, much more police presence there to ensure that persons who, as I like to say, who tend to shop out of people's pockets and baskets do not get the opportunity, or at least that we minimize the opportunity for them to enjoy a happy Christmas at the expense of others. All right, so that is the intention generally of the police for this season.
Yes. Now, you spoke of the increase in presence. Are we going to see that basically happening in the more or less of the towns?
Throughout the country. Throughout the country.
All right. So areas. So let's say there's a particular area in the town, and whether it's in St. George's, St. Andrew, St. Patrick, any of these within these parishes, and with the increased presence, what do the police would like to see in terms of the behavior of the general public, especially the attitude towards the police officers?
Yes, and that's a very pertinent question, and I like to piggyback on what happened during the carnival season. The police appealed to the public for sensible behavior, to be conscious of what you're doing and how you're doing it, to ensure that what you do doesn't negatively affect other persons. And we're making the same appeal. That persons, and I like to reiterate that point about persons who do the pickpockets and the people who break people's houses and businesses and so on. We're making a special appeal to them. There are a lot of things that you can find out there that you can make money. All right? There are a lot of people who may not normally employ somebody to clean their yards and so forth. If you go to them and ask, they may just oblige, and you may get a job to clean somebody's yard, and you do a good job, you may get a neighbor seeing that and wanting that's done as well.
One leads to the next, which means
exactly.
you get more. You came from one, you may end up getting another.
And just like that, you can change your entire life. All right? So we're making a special appeal to those types of persons. The persons who are inclined to take the wrong route in order to have a happy Christmas, that they should reconsider that. The persons who go out there to activities and so on, you're going out to have fun, and violence should not be on your mind. All right? And there are a lot of persons who tend to think of it like, I am walking with my knife to defend myself. And I've known of a lot of situations. My time spent in the court has afforded me the opportunity to know of a lot of situations where persons get seriously injured. In fact, there are times when persons ended up dead, and the injuries were inflicted by their own weapons. And so, leave the weapons at home. In fact, you find yourself in a situation that seems like it's going to lead to violence. Walk away. It doesn't cost you anything. I always say to people that being the bigger person, proving that you're a big man, means doing the wise thing. Not necessarily, and in fact, in most cases, proving that you're a big man doesn't mean taking on the person. All right? So those are the kind of things that we're looking for, generally, from the public.
No, you got into that particular area of the conversation where we're talking about people walking around with offensive weapons and so forth, and especially with the season approaching, the various events that may be coming up. What kind of tolerance level is the police looking to enforce in those areas? I don't know which one of the officers would like to answer that.
I'll answer the question. Generally, the RGPF, we have a zero tolerance approach towards the use of offensive weapon or persons having in their possession offensive weapon. And when we speak of offensive weapon, there's two definitions. An offensive weapon can be considered as something made or adapted for use for the purpose of causing bodily harm or injury to some other person. So take, for instance, it could be a cutlass. The cutlass was not made for that purpose, but persons adapted to be used for the purpose of chopping a human being. Or something made could be like a weapon with a wooden handle, a piece of iron that you sharpen the edges and insert that piece of iron into that object to make it an offensive weapon. And we want to make a special appeal to the members of the public that there is no excuse for having in your possession an offensive weapon unless you have some lawful authority or the excuse is reasonable, meaning that no lame excuse then. If you're a tradesman and you come from work and it's already after 10 in the evening, you didn't work overtime, you didn't you didn't remain on the block and drink with your boys, and you're not now going home.
Look at interject here and say this. You know, from time to time we do see individuals walk in the street with a cutlass. I even noticed someone walking through the tongue of St. George with a cutlass in their hand. Is there a particular way that individual is supposed to be concealing that? Is there a law or so that sometimes people maybe don't know, individuals of them maybe don't know, and you watch them individuals just walking the street with that cutlass, not concealing any way or wrapped. I remember in the older days as a youngster, you will see a farmer, mostly all the individuals, you will see walking with cutlasses. You know that individual, but they just have it exposed. Is there any law that governs this, that individuals should not be walking around with weapons? We're talking about a cutlass, for instance, now. Yeah. I don't know, has there ever been a report concerning this, or have the police ever had these concerns?
Yes, it's a major concern for us. As a matter of fact, as I was saying, what is your excuse? I mean, the offense that we refer to as assault, it can be committed by just someone walking with an exposed cutlass. You know, someone seeing it, they apprehend immediate fear. They think that their life might be endangered. For some reason, you may not be approaching them to chop them, but they're not accustomed to that sort of environment, and you walking with that cutlass can, you know, you can be arrested. Now, what we urging persons to do, persons who have that lawful excuse, is to avoid any circumstance that would lead to the police having to question, you know, why you're out here this time of the day, and why you're in this position with this instrument or this weapon. And it goes back to the purpose you intend to use the weapon for. So a man could tell you, honestly, listen, as the ASP said, officer, the boys out the road, they're always threatening me. So I decide I'll go walk with my cutlass. If they attack me, I'll go use it. But I don't mean nothing. I wouldn't just take my cutlass and chop nobody. But if them fellas attack me, I'll use my cutlass to defend myself. And they think that it's okay. But it's not. Just the mere fact that you have it to use it for that purpose, that constitutes the offense of possession of offensive weapon. So it could get you into
more problems than even cutting somebody with someone with it.
Exactly. So you were speaking about on the streets, yeah? And as I was saying, conceal. If you have a legitimate reason for having the weapon, conceal it. You know, in such a way that it doesn't cause anybody to apprehend fear or create any sort of public disturbance.
Because sometimes it becomes very fearful. You're walking, not that you think that someone is going to attack you with it, but just the mere visual of seeing someone walk in the street with a cutlass. I think as the police have decided to have any campaign on those issues where they could come out and speak more about it, encourage folks to, for the reason someone dressed in their nice clothes and they're walking with a cutlass in their hand. I mean, I've seen it from time to time. Has there ever any thought of, you know, let me more public campaign on that aspect of it?
I do not recall any specific campaign geared towards that particular point of how you carry your weapons, but it is always mentioned whenever we do programs where we speak about offensive weapons. It is usually mentioned that it is advised that you secure you conceal your instruments properly. And I remember when I was much younger, you would not see someone walk the street, especially in the town or so, with an exposed blade, like a knife or a cutlass or so. You'd always see persons with those things wrapped up. But society has changed so much that persons do not care anymore about the impression that they give and so forth. And again, we appeal to persons to be responsible. So you come from purchasing a cutlass, or you came from doing a job somewhere that you needed to use the cutlass. Wrap it up in something. If you can put it in a bag, all the better. If persons cannot tell that you have a cutlass, it's the best way to carry it. Or you have a weapon, it's the best way to carry it. Because as the corporal said, it's easy for someone to apprehend that fear of injury or so forth on seeing that thing, especially if it is really sharp. it is fearful. Just the sight of it.
Because, you know, I had one instance where I had a visitor from the U.S. who actually saw someone walk in the street with a cutlass, and they were very fearful. And he's saying, yes, in the U.S., where there may be crime at a higher nature than here in our island, he's saying that he has never seen someone walk in the street with a cutlass. Right. You understand? He has never seen. Or I tried to defuse the whole conversation when saying, well, the individual is a farmer and stuff like that, but it still was not right to see someone walk in the street with a cutlass.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah. And another very important thing, the police has a major responsibility to prevent the commission of offenses. And that is one of the things that the police will do in order to make sure that we prevent offenses being committed. If you're seen in circumstances which are questionable, and you're carrying an instrument that might be considered an offensive weapon, the police is likely to confiscate that instrument. So you're saying to us that, well, I came from work and I just decided to pass by the party. But why would you go to the party with your knife in your bag or in your pocket? So the police, even if you do not get charged, the weapon will be confiscated.
Do you feel it's because of the way times has changed? People are seeing there are less consequences for doing those things, and you think that's the reason why it continue to happen?
I don't think that there are less consequences. I think people don't take things as seriously as we used to, as we should. Take, for example, going to prison. 25, 30 years ago, you in the community and you've been to prison, you're stigmatized and everybody would look at you with scorn and things like that. No, it's a joy for some young men to go to prison. They can brag that, listen, I've been to Jonestown and you can't tell me anything. So that is the effect, I think, that is causing the prevalence of some of these behaviors. The fact that persons are no more concerned about the consequences.
They don't feel, well, it has diminished their way of life
exactly
anymore.
Exactly.
I've been to prison, that's it. And I've been there for 1, 2, 3, 4, some of them 10 times.
Right.
And you understand.
So just to point out, if you followed in recent times, Jamaica has designed a new set of laws in relation to firearms, because they had some very stringent laws existing before, but because of how prevalent the offenses have gotten, then they've adjusted them again to make them more stringent. And I'm not sure whether it's yet implemented, but I've learned about it, that it was already drafted and so forth.
Okay.
And it's very strict. So maybe that's the direction we need to go now, that we need to adjust the sentences, what we do about specific situations that are not beginning, but have begun to plague us.
Yeah. I'll just say that to say that, because there are times you have to nip certain things in the bud early before it goes to beyond. And it's sometimes it gets so prevalent now that folks, as you said, just that don't care attitude towards it as it gets along. Let's take a break, officers. We're coming back and we get into more discussion this one. It's To The Point here on K105 and GBN TV. We're coming right back after the break.
On your marks!
The National Insurance Scheme continues to make it easy to access our services using the MyNIS online platform. Now we're introducing a new feature that allows you to submit your benefit claims from the convenience of your smart devices. No paper, no hassle. All you have to do is log in to my.nisgrenada.org. Select claims, fill out the relevant information, and click submit. We'll take it from there. It's that simple and that easy. Submit a claim from the comfort of your home as you rest and recuperate. Enjoy the convenience of faster claim processing and monitor the status of your claim every step of the way. We are excited to introduce this new feature to better serve you. NIS is changing the game and the way you make your claim. Access anywhere and anytime with MyNIS Online.
I want your folks to play these 3 games from the NLA. Daily pick 3 cash flow and play with. You will be supporting sports and culture, nation building.
Hey, let me say welcome back to our listeners and viewers this morning. It's To The Point here on the K105 and GBN TV. And we have officers here from the Royal Grenada Police Force, the Community Relations Department. And we have started off talking about, some of the heightened law enforcement that the police will be offering for the season approaching, the Christmas season, increasing in the police presence and the actions and so forth that will be taken. We also spent a bit of a time talking about offensive weapons that they'll be taking offering that zero tolerance and just in case individual decide, well, hey, I'm going out to that particular event and I have to walk at a particular weapon, there'll be a zero tolerance for that. We're moving to another level in the conversation right now. We're talking noise pollution, officers, and in reference to music and so forth. A lot of emphasis has been spent on the buses lately, even folks in their private vehicles and so forth. What you would like to speak about this morning or make reference to in terms of noise pollution? Let's talk more or less with buses. What is permitted and what is not permitted?
Okay. Noise in general is controlled by the regulations, the Noise Control Act 2006. And noise can be any sound, and it can also include vibration. And if any person intends to conduct any form of business, anything that you intend to do that is expected or is likely to create noise significant enough that it can disturb any other person, you will be required to obtain a noise permit in order to do that, including construction. And I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of that. You will be required to obtain a permit before you can go ahead.
But do we see that happening? Do people even apply for permits?
It does happen. It does happen. I am not sure. I cannot say for a fact that it is done all of the times, but it does happen, especially in the towns and so forth, and major construction.
There could be a particular machinery that they have to use that will be a
yes, especially if you're going to be using heavy machinery and so forth. But our major concern in Grenada is music. All right, and it has become almost normal for persons to play amplified music at any time of the day, any time of the night, at any volume, without regards for anyone else. There might be senior citizens in a particular community. There might be persons who are ill. There are some persons who cannot sleep if music is being played to their hearing. All right, as I like to put it, some persons can sleep on a speaker box while the music is playing.
So true.
And some persons cannot sleep 100 yards away from the speaker. All right, so the police will be enforcing the law in relation to music much more stringently than usual during this season. Another thing that I think a lot of people do not understand is the application for permit. And what I'm going to do is read the section that deals with that so that everyone can get it from, as we say, the horse's mouth. The law. All right, so section 18 of the Noise Control Act 2006 says in subsection 1, no loudspeaker or musical instrument shall be operated or used for the purpose of providing music in any public place in circumstances where such music is reasonably capable of disturbing any person occupying or residing in private premises, unless written application for permission for the operation shall have been made to the police by lodging the same at the police station nearest to the proposed venue, not later than 10 clear days before the date on which it is proposed to operate the loudspeaker or musical instrument. And I want to reiterate that point. By lodging it at the police station nearest to the proposed venue, not later than 10 clear days before the date on which it is proposed to operate the loudspeaker or musical instrument. And permission for the same shall have been granted in writing by the Commissioner of Police. All right, so that is what the law says in relation to that issue. So let's first talk about the application. It had become a practice for persons to send in an application for noise permit 2 days, 3 days before the event, 5 days before the event. And what that does is create a significant level of difficulty for the police to process that application. Because there are a lot of things that need to be done before a decision can be made. The police has to first investigate the applicant, investigate the venue and the circumstances to determine whether it is
appropriate to have an event.
Exactly, an event of that nature at that location. We also have to determine how it's gonna affect the other persons, the traffic in the area. There are a lot of places that you have a nice venue, but you do not have any parking space. And everybody would park on the street. And you know that when those persons come to park, they're not concerned about anyone else. I just want a nice park, and I'm going to my event.
I could care less about the obstruction that I'm
Thank you. So all of these things have to be looked into before a decision can be made. And we're giving the public notice as of now that going forward, your application may not be considered if it is submitted less than 10 days before the event.
Okay.
All right, so we want to sound that warning.
And that is across the board.
Across the board. We want to sound that warning loud and clear. Your application must reach the police at least 10 days before the event. And that is one thing. The second thing is, when you receive a permission, the permission or the noise permit comes with several conditions, and you must abide by those conditions.
All right.
Any breach of any of those conditions can result in the cancellation of your permit. So you have an activity scheduled to start at midnight and end at 4. And at 12:05, there's already a problem because you're not following the guidelines, you're not following the rules of that permit. Your activity can be shut down 5 minutes after it started.
Okay.
In fact, you can also be charged in some circumstances for breach of those conditions. So we want the organizers and promoters to be aware of these things. All right? And one of those conditions is to ensure that there is no breach of the peace.
All right.
To ensure that there is no traffic obstruction. I mean, we all understand that in some cases, the promoter may not have full control over how people park. So then it means if you want to ensure that you do not have a problem with your event, you hire people to control that.
Exactly.
Right? To make sure that everything runs smoothly for your event. And it would not cost you $1,000 to get 2 persons to control parking. And you might lose your $10,000 that you likely to make from the event.
Or even invested in the event.
Thank you very much. All right? And then the failure to apply for permission. There's a misconception that the police has to give a warning, a notice. And that is not the case in every situation. All right? So in situations that I've, such as which I read, you have a party setting and you're playing music. There is no need to be issued, for you to be issued a notice before you can be charged.
So,
right.
So you're saying here now, if an individual is having an event and there's a violation, once the police are certain that there's a violation, the police can just stop that event without giving notice?
Of course. Well, stopping the event is the primary thing, because you're not authorized to hold the event.
All right.
Stopping the event is the first thing. Well, at least stopping the music.
Well, I was talking in the case of noticing there's a violation of the permit that was
yes, of course.
So in the case of the individual issued a permit to go through to have that particular event, everything was cleared, so the permit was issued.
Yes.
But in the process of getting the event started, or in the process of the event, there's a violation.
Right.
The police can actually stop that event.
Of course. In fact, we're encouraging the persons who receive noise permits to read the permits, because every permit tells you that any violation may result in the cancellation of the permit. Right. And of course, if the permit is cancelled, then it means you cannot play music.
You're not going to go forward with the event anymore.
All right. So we encourage them to read that permit and understand what it says. I've known of situations where you ask persons about their permit and they say, they tell me I get the permit and I didn't go and collect it. But how do you know what it says? You may have applied for a period of time that you didn't get permission for. If you don't collect the permit, then you may not know these things.
Could I ask this? So permits are offered at a time factor?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, because if it is open, then it means persons may play music up to 6 o'clock in the morning when my grandmother trying to get to church. And
so I was just asking, sometimes we see events going where people are leaving the events 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we don't hear anything happen for that reason. But what you say now, the police could say, your event has been offered from 9 p.m. to midnight.
And that is what happens.
And that's what happens.
Yes.
And you go beyond midnight,
it's a breach. It's an offense, because your permit is up to midnight. Any music you play 5 minutes past midnight becomes an offense, because you do not have permission to play music after midnight.
Let's talk about the music on buses,
right?
Which seems to be a growing problem now, where sometimes I'm hearing where buses may be at the terminus and not playing their music loud because of that particular location, but drives off and it becomes no annoyance for the passengers on board and so forth. Is there a limit in terms of what bus owners and who bus owners show in terms of the limit of the amplified music within the vehicle?
Yes. Well, the buses, fortunately, I would say, are governed by 2 different sets of laws in relation to music on the buses. They're governed by the Noise Control Act as well, but also the traffic rules says that an omnibus shall not be equipped with musical equipment that is capable of producing sound more than 20 watts. Right? So if you just having it, even though it's turned off, it contravenes the law. Yes,
so that's a violation.
Yes, it is a violation. And then playing it at a significant volume becomes another issue. And just permit me again to speak to that. So this section of the Noise Control Act does not refer specifically to buses, but vehicles in general. All right, section 21, it says, any person who, without written permission from the Commissioner of Police, drives or permits to be driven a motor vehicle on a road when that vehicle makes excessive noise from its engine, exhaust, radio, tape deck, air horn, or any other part or equipment attached, whether such equipment is built into the vehicle or not, and whether for the reproduction of music, speech, other song or otherwise, commits an offense. So you see how broad this section is. And nothing here says that the police has to speak to you first or warn you first. It says if you do that, you commit an offense.
When does this also speak for private vehicles?
Right, and that's the point I made at the beginning. It's not only applicable to buses, it says vehicles in general. So it's the same for the person with a private car. And that coincides with the issue of parties and so on. You mentioned persons leaving a party at 7 o'clock and so forth. And we've had instances where the operator or the promoter of the party accepts that his time is up and shuts down his music. But some person with a vehicle outside may open up their trunk and their doors and start playing loud music. That is an offense. And you can be arrested and charged for it.
All right. Because I've had an instance where a few weeks ago an individual would park outside of my house 2 o'clock in the morning, and a private vehicle, and he would just wake up my children in the room.
Right.
I came out the first night, tell him he stopped, and came back the second night and did it again.
Right.
Called the police, but I didn't get a response. Nobody answered the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. You understand?
That's odd.
Nobody had the phone rang out because he came back the next night, and we ended up getting into an argument because I had to tell him you can't do that. 2 o'clock in the morning. Would just park and I'm talking about maximum. He had lots of amplified music in his vehicle.
I would love to find out what was responsible for the failure of the police to answer the phone. No one answered the phone. But I'm not trying to make an excuse here. I know that several of the police stations, especially if you're calling the fixed line numbers, there are significant issues with those.
Okay.
All right, I think the company is trying to rectify that problem, and a lot of places you would call and you would not get through. But that is not to say that it was the case when you called. And when you started making the point, I sort of geared up to make this point, that we have a lot of situations where persons talk about those types of issues, things that affect them in the communities, but they talk about it in a general sense. So you'd hear people say that them young fellas just come and sit down on the block and smoke us at the weed and cuss us at the word and disrespect people and so on. But we do not get many persons calling at the time or coming forward at the time so that the specific issues can be dealt with. So I'm glad that you attempted to call in that particular case. So what we encourage persons to do is report the specific issues, and those persons can be charged. In that case that you're speaking of, your evidence can be used to take that person to court.
Yeah.
The police doesn't have to witness it themselves. All right? It just requires certain explanations.
I know, but sometimes folks, individual may not want to take it to that length. At times, you may not want to take it to the length where you want to get to court, and and the time and factor that takes up. You understand?
And you know what? We spoke earlier about the changes in society, and I can say the changes in culture, and that too, I believe, is one of the issues. One of the reasons that a lot of things are getting very common, a lot of wrongs in our society, because we have less and less people coming forward and standing up. So not many persons are willing to confront them when they're doing it and say, listen, this is wrong and you should not be doing it. And likewise, not many people are willing to come to the police and say, listen, this is happening and I think you all should do something about it. I'm prepared to give a statement and I'm prepared to give evidence.
Let's take a break. When we come back and talk about more. It's K105, GBN TV. We're coming back here, folks. It's to the point for today first. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
games from the NLA. Daily picture cash flow and play with. You will be supporting sports and culture, nation building and our future. So go out and play, folks, make it a must. You will see what the National Lottery is doing for us. When you play picture cash flow and play with, the NLA will support you all the way.
Starting September 30th, Monday to Friday, these 3 games will be drawn mid-morning, 9:45 a.m., midday, 12:45 p.m., and evenings, 7:45 p.m. The National Lotteries, supporting sports, culture, and nation building.
Sunday Manity.
Let's mingle and jingle.
You mean jingle and mingle, right?
Does it really matter? Mingle and Jingle, the mid-morning program that will drive the Christmas season. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Classic Radio, GBN Television, and all GBN social media platforms.
It's where the deals of the season are, where the Christmas music is played, holiday traditions are relived, and where all the fun is.
Mingle and Jingle.
Or jingle and mingle. Mid-mornings from November 14th to December 23rd only on the GBN network.
Made possible by
Flow,
Westerhold Rums,
Hard On Plus,
Judy Free Caribbean Holdings,
Ace Hardware,
Gittins Healthcare, and
Grenville Credit Union.
Welcome back to our listeners and viewers this morning. Good morning to one and all once again. Members of the Royal Grenada Police Force here with us this morning, the Community Relations Department. And we're talking this morning. Let's get into another bit of conversation this morning. Conflict resolution. And we hear of people getting into conflicts from time to time for various reasons. You know, some of the aspect even like in terms of, you spoke a bit of it earlier, the people walking around with cutlasses and so forth, and which would kind of give them a bit of feeling tough because I have a cutlass with me. You understand? When does the Community Relations Department comes into this, and what sort of advice you would like to offer to folks out there in terms of conflict resolution, how they should go about dealing with it?
Okay then. So conflict resolution is something that the force really encourage. We see that as a way of reducing the total number of crimes that we have reported to the police on a daily basis. Now we encourage that people having conflicts with each other should sort alternative measures or ways in settling those disputes. So we encourage people to, if you have a conflict with someone else and you think that you would get out of control or you wouldn't be able to handle it, then you try to speak to someone in whom you trust, all right? Or instead of taking the law into your own hands, you may resort to calling the police. More often these days than before, we are seeing the violent side of the human beings that we have within our trial and state. We are seeing an increase in domestic violence, an increase in the use of offensive weapons, as we speak about before. And we think that all that can be avoided if we choose to seek the assistance or the aid of the various institutions that we have available within our trial and state. Our people have issues and they don't know where to turn or who to turn to. But just sit back when this issue arises, sit back, take a rest. You know, if you're feeling heated, take a shower. Don't go and grab the cutlass. Take a shower and think. Call a friend. Ask questions. Say, sometimes it might be that your child don't have money to go to school to buy lunch today. You can call a friend. They might be able to tell you, okay, that the Ministry of Education have this program, the school feeding program, or they might be able to tell you that there is advice that you can get from legal aid, or even simply come into Community Relations Department and seeking some assistance. we are saying that the police cannot solve all the issues by ourselves.
Well, officer, if I can interject and you here for a bit, but sometimes, with all that is said, sometimes it's easier said than done, especially when you're in a conflict and the heat of the moment. You understand, and you feel threatened and you feel that you have to defend yourself. You understand? Sometimes there's not much thought could be put into how can I resolve this right
and
now.
that is why we're not waiting for you to end up in the conflict to share these issues, these tips with you, but we're telling you now. So when you end up in the heated situation, you might think back and say, watch, the police already, give the warning. So there would be no further warning. As the ASP said, we have a zero tolerance approach to violence on a whole for this Yuletide season.
All right.
The use of offensive weapon, as he said before, the police would be intensifying the operations. So we wouldn't have passive policing. Like you would go to the town and be doing your shopping, and you would see the police engaging, persons out there. So it wouldn't be like passive, like the police just standing and people doing what they want
and just looking on.
Action taking place in the street and the police just looking on. But we would have like block searches, traffic checks.
All right.
As I said, an increase in foot and mobile patrol. So we want to urge you now to find, the avenue to resolve your conflict instead of resorting to crime and violence. So some people forget the primary function of the churches, and so they have their issues, and instead of going to the church, they would go to their friends on the street and form a unit or a gang, as we say, and go back and try to get swift justice. But in doing so, you're only putting yourself at risk of becoming an offender, at risk of finding yourself in front of the magistrate, being charged, or even being incarcerated, for some long period of time. Now, as you rightfully said, when you end up in heated arguments, now you don't have control. Sometimes your intention is not to take a life, or your intention may not be to cause serious bodily harm or injury, but it may happen. So we encourage you to think it over before you act. Count from 1 to 1,000. They say count from 1 to 100. Count from 1 to 1,000. If you think that you really need to act, go to the police and ask the police. If the police, I cannot say from where I'm sitting that the police always take action at the time that you expect them to take action. But you make a complaint to the police. This is the channel that the law has set up, so you can get your complaints to go before the magistrate or before the judge. You go through that channel to get your complaints to be dealt with, or else you might find yourself being the one
taken before the magistrate.
Officer, I want to say this. A few weeks ago, or just maybe sometime last week, I had a caller that called in when I had an open line segment, and she was complaining that she had a restraining order put out on someone who was having an issue with maybe a personal friend once or twice. And I'm not sure if this is going to be relative to the conversation, but I'd just like to have a response on how this could be dealt with. And she said that she has reported it on 2 occasions to the police, and for some reason or the other now, the police officer that she has reported has taken her number and is wanting to get into a personal conversation with her. She's unhappy about that. How, as being the community relation department, I could be that individual that's listening to us this morning. How should she have dealt with that? She's not happy about it, because she said it's 2 officers per se, and the first one she may have put a stop to it, but the second one continues, persistent, and a bit of a harassment she's believing it to be.
So the RGPF considered this sort of action to be very unethical.
Of course.
And if she so desire, or she can still come to the community relations department, or based on her location, there's a sub-office at Grenville and one at Guelph, and make a complaint. And this matter would be looked into, and the officer will be spoken to or disciplined accordingly.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I did tell her next time the police came in, I would ask that question. That's the reason why I wrote it up.
If I may add this, you made the point that you don't know if we're going off track with the conversation, but I'm glad you raised this point because I believe it is important that the public understands, and I think probably we should have an entire session on this issue, the functions of the Community Relations Department. Mm-hmm. All right, and that this department is responsible for, you would hear in places like the US and so forth, of internal investigation. That is one of the major responsibilities of the Community Relations Department. Mm-hmm. And people would say sometimes, oh, it's police and what they're going to do is all of them is one and so forth. And I want the nation to understand that the Community Relations Department takes its responsibility very seriously. Right. And as the head of that department now, anyone who knows me would know that I take any responsibility that I have very seriously. Okay. So we are not going to allow things like that to happen and do nothing about it. Okay. Persons comment several times that police to investigate police and they're not going to, but has anyone taken a look at the number of police officers who have been charged for criminal offenses, the number of officers who have been sent to prison for criminal offenses? Who investigated them?
The police themselves.
Of course. I have never known in my entire service in the RGPF of any investigation in this country that was conducted entirely by anybody outside of the police force, any criminal investigation. So even in circumstances where outsiders might have been involved, but the RGPF is the lead on the investigation. So I want to encourage persons out there who have any sort of issue with police officers, any type whatsoever. It may not be something that the officer is doing wrong per se, but it might be something that makes you uncomfortable. And we would not say that we're disciplining the officer, but we advise the officers on how they're supposed to conduct themselves. All right? Sometimes people make complaints against officers, and after we investigate, we realize the officer did not do wrong. In fact, I can speak of a particular instance where a complaint was made against an officer. And fortunately, we were able to retrieve camera footage of the entire thing, and it clearly showed that the officer did nothing wrong. In fact, the person who complained against the officer was the one who was wrong. Okay. Right? And we confronted them with the camera footage and everything, and they basically admitted. Okay. But still, we called the officer and advised them on how he should conduct himself, even when he's not in the wrong. Yes, so we really want the nation to understand that.
Well, I'm happy you were able to clarify that and would give a sense of comfort to the officials listening out there who may come into issues like that and feel may not want to complain for various reasons. But it's just that the call, and I did promise anytime I have a Community Relations Department in, I will ask such question, and I did get it in. Let's move on to there's the Utah season is coming, and with all the plans that you have, liquor dealers, because folks may feel now, well, there's a particular event happening, I could just, get a cart and then put some drinks in and go sell. Yes. What is the level of tolerance the Community Relations Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force is thinking about having with that?
From a personal perspective, I think the police has been way too lenient with this issue of sale of alcohol and so forth. All right, but the law says that no person is allowed to sell or even have for sale. In fact, Section 43 of the Liquor Dealers Licenses Act speaks specifically to that, and it says every person who has in his possession any intoxicating liquor for the purpose of selling, bartering, exposing for sale, or disposing of the same contrary to the provisions of this act, or B, has in his possession for the purpose of sale or barter any rum adulterated with any drug or any pernicious ingredients. So, we focus on A. Having in your possession any intoxicating liquor for the purpose of sale or offering for sale or for bartering for the persons who may not know what it means is exchanging one item for another item. So you're not getting paid in cash. All right, anything of that nature that you do without first having obtained a liquor license is an offense. All right, and excuse me, the process of obtaining a license, and you ask specifically about the persons on the street and so forth, is very simple. of course your character is of particular importance, right? But you simply get the assistance, and I put it this way, the assistance of 2 licensed liquor dealers.
That's reference.
Yes. You go to the court, it's a simple form you have to fill out. I think the process is way too simple, right? And if you cannot do it on your own, the court staff will assist you in preparing it. And you get a license to do your business. Rather than you playing hide and seek with the police, and you're saying things like, "Officer, I ain't selling it. I just had a day for my friends." And I like to ask the question: which person stacks a cooler with drinks and comes into the town and say, "Guys, come and drink"? And I remember a particular senior officer hearing about a situation where a particular senior officer some years ago, in an area close to Fantasia nightclub, went into a shop. And the operator said, "Those drinks are not for sale. I have them here to give away to persons who buy." And the officer called on the persons who are around, "Guys, there are free drinks in here,
Come and get it." But he couldn't give it away at the time. Did he?
Well, no, the officer himself wouldn't give it away. But what is important...
The proprietor himself, did he give it away?
No. What is important was his reaction when the officer said that. So it was very obvious that he was not selling. And people make silly excuses. Police is not stupid. Even if a police officer may not charge you, but it doesn't mean that they buy your excuse that you're not selling. And then, as the law says, you do not have to actually sell. So I do not have to see you sell. If you have it for that purpose, it's an offense. All right, in relation to the licensed dealers, the persons with the bars and the shops and so forth, you have certain responsibilities in relation to the conduct of the persons that are patronizing your business and so forth. You have to make sure that there is no breach of the peace. You have to make sure that persons don't get intoxicated and things of that sort. The Liquor Dealers Act speaks to closing of liquor shops at 9 p.m. And while that is not a norm anymore, police does not come and say close your shop at 9 o'clock. But what we want them to understand, those operators to understand, is that if there are any issues with your particular shop, the police may shut you down. I am not going to be the officer in charge of a station and I'm having so much problems at this shop at 10 o'clock in the night when the law says you must close at 9. So if you do not abide by the law, then I am going to shut you down. And you fail to comply, I'm going to charge you for breach of the law. All right. Another important issue is sale of alcohol to children. All right. And Section 39 of the Act speaks to that it is an offense to sell or deliver alcohol to any person under 18 years of age.
Has there ever been any serious complaints about that in Grenada?
A while back, I've dealt with an issue of that nature, but I haven't heard of it for a long time, of anybody complaining. And that, again, is most likely due to the breakdown in discipline in law and order in the country.
Well, probably there's no, some folks, even though it's happening, maybe not see it as a reason to complain. Youngsters are coming to purchase alcohol, they may not want to complain about it.
Exactly, and that is the problem.
Let's move on to an issue that I have spoke about numerous times here on this program. Obstruction of vehicle causing obstruction, especially in the forms of where it has come to a norm in Grenada where people feel because I come to a friend right there and his house is right on the road. I should stop and talk to him as I want, and as an individual driving, you are causing that obstruction. What does the police intend to do about that in Grenada? I think it's becoming a big problem. And I know as officers, you probably are drivers yourself, and you see these obstructions happening from time to time. Business places who have their businesses on the close proximity with the road and may not have adequate parking for that business. And you see folks who will be using that particular business will stop on the road and create those obstructions for the other oncoming traffic. Well, how is the Community Relations Department, the Royal Grenada Police Force, the Traffic Department? I'm not sure if you can speak for all of these departments. How do you plan on dealing with that issue, which is becoming a big problem in Grenada?
Okay, so obstruction, we see obstruction as a major issue or concern to us in the RGPF. You ask how do we intend to deal with it, and it's how we intend to as we come to speak today about intensifying our operations, the traffic department and police officers generally, I'm not exempting any police officer, whether you say you might be attached to the finance department or to the tailor shop. But if you're dressed in uniform and you're out there and you observe road traffic violations, then you have the authority to deal with it.
And the responsibility.
All right.
And so, just to give a little idea to the public, when we speak about obstruction, what we're speaking about the vehicles that fail to get a suitable place to pull over to the side of the road, as so to allow the free passage of traffic, or so that the next vehicle don't have to force to pass. Yes, so you stop in the middle of the road, or you might stop to the side in a narrow road, or maybe at a dangerous point in the road where a next vehicle may not be able to pass or pass freely, then you're causing obstruction to the traffic. And so we see it happening a lot in our towns, especially. I don't want anyone to feel offended, but it's just a fact when we say that the minibuses are very known or common for causing obstruction, especially on Church Street. Now, obstruction is a ticketable offense. Yes? So it's a road traffic violation, according to section 26, subsection 6. And persons who are ticketed, they would be given this opportunity to pay the fine in court or challenge the ticket at the magistrate court. Now, to the person who you are obstructing, it seems like, as the ESP was saying, it seems like even though you stop for 5 or for 30 seconds in that road, it seems like you're stopped there for 5-10 minutes. Yeah. And we're asking the motorists generally to be considerate, consider other road users. And when I say road users, I'm not only speaking about the motorists, but the pedestrians as well. Consider them when you decide you want to stop in the road and obstruct the traffic, because what happens is that some of our streets are so narrow. When the traffic comes to a stop, even pedestrians can't pass. All right, we want to urge the bus drivers, we want to urge the passengers, give early notice that you intend to stop. Look for a suitable place where you can pull over to the side of the road and allow the free passage of the traffic to continue. If you're in a private motor vehicle and you, let's say on a morning time, coming down Lucas Street, it's 2 lanes, but the road could only accommodate 2 vehicles. Yes. And there is a 2-way, some people going onto the car and some people coming up. So if you stop on one side, then it's obvious the traffic will come to a halt. Some people stop to let off an individual, we understand, but make it brief. So if you have your child or someone going to work, let them mobilize early. You come into the point of drop-off, grab the bag, give the early kiss if you have to give a kiss. Sometimes the husband and the wife, we see it happening. You don't come off the traffic line long behind and you're still going to give a kiss through the window. Sometimes, it makes people uncomfortable and you're already committing a violation. So we see it as a major concern. We see it as a setback, especially sometimes you might have emergency vehicles in the lane, stuck in the traffic just because of your negligence. And so we don't want that to be continuing. As we say, we intend to intensify our operations. The police are already ticketing individuals, and so for this season, if you intend not to comply with our little reminder that we are giving here, which you don't get much in other countries, but Grenada, we still come on the television and we let you know.
Officers, we are short for time, but I still want to put this particular question. I have it on speeding in Grenada. It is becoming a problem where road users, not only the bus drivers, but individuals in their private vehicles, are seen to taking over a nation's road as a real rally track, or however you want to call it.
Yes. You mentioned being strapped for time, and if you'll permit me,
go right ahead.
There is an issue that we believe is much more significant in one sense than the speeding, in the sense that it is much more prevalent, and is the use of handheld devices while driving. Yeah. All right, and that is something that we want to speak on and to emphasize. The Road Traffic Amendment Act 21 of 2017 speaks very clearly on that issue. And it seems like a lot of people do not understand this particular point. So please permit me to read the sections. Section 77B says in subsection 1, a person who, while driving or having charge of a private motor car or a goods vehicle on any road, holds or uses a handheld mobile device, commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $3,500 and imprisonment for 3 months. Yeah. All right. Subsection 2 says a person who, while driving or having charge of a public service vehicle, holds or uses a handheld mobile device, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of $5,000 and to imprisonment for 1 year. And this one is very surprising to many people. Subsection 3, a person who, while supervising the holder of a learner's driving permit, uses a handheld mobile device, commits an offense. All right, so we want to emphasize these 3 subsections. A lot of persons believe that if they have the phone in their hand and it's not to their ear, they're not committing an offense. And that is a misconception, as this section says, and it is specified. Holds or uses. So once you're holding on to it, you're committing the offense while you're driving. All right? And there's a very significant fine in terms of imprisonment. $3,500 for a traffic offense is a very heavy fine. And that
just basically that holding that cell phone in your hand even though you're not in use.
Yes, that tells you the seriousness of the offense. All right? And that is one of the main causes of serious accidents in recent times. And then subsection 2, the fine is $5,000, and that is because you're not only endangering yourself and your family or your friends, you're endangering persons who pay you to provide them with a service, right? That is the taxis and the minibuses, right? So the fine, the penalty here is much more stringent. So we want to appeal to the drivers, the motorists, to avoid that practice. As I indicated, it is the cause of many of our accidents. And we're going to let the public know as well, because the police is not about catching you, hiding and catch you. The police is about prevention. So we're going to let the public know that if you're involved in an accident and you were on your cell phone, we have means of knowing that. Yeah. We now have a very effective IT department that can tell the times that you were on your phone and so forth. So the point at which the accident occurred in relation to the times that you might have made calls or received calls and ended your call. So we will be able to tell whether you were on your phone
and that was the cause of the accident.
And the court can infer that was the cause. All right, so that will be a possibility that will be put forward, because that evidence is going to be brought to the court that you were using your phone between this point and that point, and the accident occurred at that point.
Could it also be the reason that when this particular law was came out and was an implementation of it, we saw there was a lot of stringent measures being taken by the police, but I kind of get a sense of it. There's been a slowdown or not much attention being put in, because I'm seeing lots of folks are driving around using their phones now. You know, when the law just came out and you were told that you cannot use your cell phone while you're driving, everyone seemed to be paying a lot of attention to it. But now I see folks, a lot of attention, driving around, and you see folks on their phone while they're driving. Is it because the police have slowed down in terms of issuing tickets for that or stuff?
Well, I will not say the police has slowed down. I mean, persons may do things and get away with it because the police does not see them. And you would notice a lot of persons. I am driving sometimes and observe people when they get to certain locations, they bring their hand down to hide the fact that they're holding the phone or they're using the phone, and they bring it back up when they pass. For example, people pass on the Carnage, close to Central Police Station, and you'd observe that they had their hand up to their face and then they bring it down and so forth. And the police may not chase you, may not run you down because they observe that. But do not expect or do not feel too comfortable that it's okay. Because as indicated before several times, especially during this Yuletide season, we are going to be intensifying our operations. We are going to be treating offenses much more seriously. There'll be much less tolerance for the commission of offenses.
All right. Officers, I know that if any closing statements you guys would like to make, we are a little bit over time. Any closing statements you want to make before we take a wrap for today?
Yes, as you mentioned, speeding. Just briefly, I want to just remind the general public that speeding is one of the major contributing factors to a number of our road fatalities. All right, and so we want to urge motorists to be cautious. Remember yourself, especially after the shows and so on. We want to see you arrive alive. So the speeding is not necessary. Grenada is quite a small place, and no destination. You can arrive at least 20 minutes before or after if you choose to drive cautiously. Remember that the road is a public road and it's not a private runway. So remember the other persons who are using the road. When you speed on the road, you're endangering their life as well as yours. So that's just a reminder for now.
All right. Officers, I want to thank you very much for being part of the program this morning. Very fruitful information as always. Hope we could do this again as the season draws closer. In terms of keeping that constant reminder to the general public out there about the do's and don'ts as we draw closer. Thanks once again.
Thank you very much for having us. And blessed.
All right. Hey folks, those of you listening and viewing audience, I want to thank you so much for being part of To The Point. We went a little bit over time today, but it was necessary. Until we have another edition for you, have a great day. This is where I say goodbye.